Welcome, weary traveler, to another journey back through the corridors of time. Tonight, we'll be leaving behind the hustle and bustle of your modern world and slowly, gently, drifting back to a time both familiar and profoundly alien. Colonial America. This was a world shaped by the stark realities of survival, a landscape where every sunrise brought with it a fresh set of challenges. We're going to explore the rhythms of lives lived in humble cabins, under vast, indifferent skies. Every furrow in the earth, every leaf that shimmers above you, is a testament to the ceaseless passage of time. In the hush of this ancient forest, you find solace and strength. I hope you found some measure of relaxation in this exploration of the past. If you did, I invite you to join me again soon for more such adventures. Until then, may your nights be peaceful and your days filled with the promise of new journeys. Thank you for joining me on this journey through time. If you enjoyed this experience, I invite you to subscribe for more historical adventures. Let us know in the comments what moments from colonial America you'd like to explore further. And remember, for more immersive historical experiences, visit our website. Yet as the day wanes and twilight begins its slow descent, the tranquility of the wilderness gives way to a primal fear. The rustling leaves now seem to whisper sinister secrets, and the darkness takes on a life of its own. For within this untamed beauty, danger lurks at every turn, threatening to shatter the fragile peace of your existence. As the last vestiges of daylight fade away, leaving you in the cold embrace of night, you retreat to the sanctuary of your cabin, your heart pounding a wild tattoo against your ribs. The darkness outside intensifies, pressing against the walls of your home like a suffocating presence. It's a battle against the encroaching shadows, a fight for survival in a world where the line between civilization and the raw elements is perilously thin. With each passing moment, the forest seems to close in, its unseen inhabitants watching, waiting, and as the darkness envelops you completely, you're left to confront the demons that dance in the recesses of your mind. For here, in the heart of the colonial wilderness, the human spirit is truly tested. We'll delve into the routines, the hopes, and the quiet struggles that defined existence for those who first sought to carve out a new life in a new world. The air within its four walls is thick with the scent of beeswax and pipe tobacco. A fire crackles merrily in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the polished wood paneling. You are secure within these walls, removed from the harshest realities of the colonial frontier. Yet even here, in this haven of relative comfort, there are tensions brewing. The cries for liberty and representation grow louder in the distance, echoing the discontent that simmers among the common folk. As the night deepens, the flickering candlelight reveals a troubled reflection in the window pane. The weight of your privilege presses heavily upon you. Can true freedom exist when so many yearn for a taste of the very liberty that ever was known? The wind whispers tales of revolution on the outside, and you can't help but wonder, how long will it be before this tranquility is shattered? The comfortable silence of your privileged life is shattered by the insistent pounding of hooves on the packed earth. You hurry to the window and your blood runs cold. A group of men, faces grim, weapons raised, bursts through the front door. This is no ordinary intrusion. This is an uprising, a rebellion against the very order of things. And as they closed in, their eyes blazing with righteous anger, you realize that your world, with all its comforts and privileges, is about to be turned upside down. The fire in the hearth sputters, unable to compete with the storm that's raging outside. And as the mob descends upon your mansion, you know that the old world is ending and you're being swept along with it. Our journey tonight will unfold in four gentle phases, each designed to draw you deeper into the past, while allowing your thoughts to soften and your body to relax. We will begin by immersing ourselves in the everyday toil of the early colonial settler. Then, we'll move on to a chilling chapter of fear and injustice. Following that, we'll contemplate a haunting historical enigma before finally ascending to the elevated, yet equally demanding, world of colonial power and privilege. So, let your breath deepen, your muscles release, and your mind prepare to wander. The past awaits, not with urgent demands, but with quiet stories, ready to be heard. Close your eyes, settle in, and allow your mind to unfurl like the sails of an old wooden ship, carrying you across the vast ocean of history. Relax, breathe deeply, and travel with me to the heart of colonial America. Picture this, a modest cabin nestled amidst the towering trees of a primeval forest. The air is alive with the scent of pine and the distant murmur of a rushing stream. This is your home. It is a simple abode, yet it shelters all that you hold dear. As the first rays of sunlight begin to paint the eastern sky, you rise from your slumber. Your day begins much like the countless ones before it, a tapestry woven with threads of duty and desire. The rhythmic routines of daily life beckon. There are crops to tend, livestock to care for, and the comforting rituals of your morning chores await. Your hands, calloused yet gentle, move with practiced ease. Each action is a silent prayer whispered to the spirits of the wood. Imagine, if you will, a land untamed, a wilderness whispering of both promise and peril. Let us begin our journey. You are the master of your own time machine. As the sun climbs higher, casting long shadows that dance around you, you feel a profound connection to the land beneath your feet. Now, imagine that you are a wealthy landowner. Your home is a grand mansion, a symbol of prosperity amidst the sprawling wilderness. Our journey through time has come to an end, my fellow travelers. Colonial America is a period of history that often sparks our curiosity. Perhaps you've pondered what it would have been like to live in a colonial town or in a frontier settlement. Now, imagine yourself transported back in time, not as an observer, but as a participant. How would you fare? Could you survive and thrive in this new setting? Let's explore that idea further. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe for more engaging historical tales. Also, stick around after the video for some additional insights into life in colonial America. The small town you find yourself in is your lifeline. Here, neighbors help each other, sharing tools and resources. Disputes are settled in town meetings, decisions made by a majority vote. Religion plays a central role in colonial life. Church attendance is mandatory, and services are long, solemn affairs. There's little room for doubt or dissent. Ministers are highly respected figures, and their sermons are not just religious instruction, but also political and social commentary. Furniture was scarce, and beds were frequently shared by adults and children alike. Privacy was a luxury, and personal boundaries were not respected. Public transportation would be unrecognizable. Religious leaders held considerable power, and their influence extended beyond matters of faith. Basic technologies like locks on doors and indoor plumbing would seem magical. Even the concept of a refrigerator would be The Puritan emphasis on hard work and self-discipline permeated daily life. Could you find purpose in the monotony of endless chores and the limitations imposed by society? Or would you feel suffocated by the rigid rules and the lack of individual liberty? And what do you appreciate about your life today that you might take for granted? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. Entertainment was frowned upon, and activities like theater, dancing, and card playing were often condemned. It requires a rugged individualism, a deep sense of community, and an unwavering faith in the face of adversity. It's a world where challenges are abundant, but where the human spirit, if it's resilient enough, can triumph. Conformity was the norm, and deviation from the strict moral code could lead to ostracism from the tightly knit community. The horse-drawn omnibus might seem like an archaic novelty, but it was a common sight in colonial towns. Also, stay tuned for our next video where we'll be exploring more aspects of colonial life. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep asking questions. Other forms of transport included sailing ships, rowboats, and the humble stagecoach, which provided a bumpy, uncomfortable ride over rutted roads. The hardships of daily life, the lack of modern medicine, the absence of personal space, and the omnipresence of religion would be a stark contrast to your 21st century existence. Could you adapt? Could you find a way to thrive in such a drastically different world? Or would you yearn for the comforts and freedoms you take for granted today? Travel was slow and fraught with peril, and accidents were not uncommon. You wake up before the sun, not because of an alarm, but because your body is attuned to the rhythms of the natural world. Education was not compulsory, and schooling was often sporadic and inconsistent. One-room schoolhouses were the norm, and teachers were in short supply. Discipline was harsh, and corporal punishment was widely used. At a time when childhood was not cherished as it is now, education was seen as a privilege, not a right. Games and sports are played, but they're usually tied to religious holidays or other special occasions. Gambling, drinking, and public displays of affection are frowned upon. The tavern is the center of male social life, but it's not the raucous place you might imagine. Drinking is done in moderation, and fights or other disturbances are quickly put down by the tavern owner or local constable. In this world, there's no gentle lullaby of birdsong. Forget about fast food or gourmet meals. In colonial times, you eat what you grow and can preserve. Corn is a staple, along with beans, peas, and squash. Meat is a luxury, and fish is a welcome addition to the diet. Alcohol is produced locally, usually in the form of cider or beer. Foraging for wild foods is common, but be careful, for some plants are poisonous and some berries can kill. Hunting is allowed, but there are strict regulations to prevent the extinction of wild animals. Each meal is a victory, each harvest a cause for celebration. If you're a man, your work will likely start in the fields or the forest. There is a sense of community, a connection to the land, and a deep-rooted religious faith that sustains people through the hardship. Colonial medical practices might seem barbaric by today's standards. Bloodletting, for example, was a common practice where the patient's blood was drained in the belief that it would cure or prevent illness. Other treatments were no less excruciating, from the application of leeches to the use of purgatives to expel intestinal worms. And then there were the cures for mental illness, which often involved techniques like triphining, a process of drilling a hole into the skull. In this world, every sunrise is a new challenge, every sunset a hard-earned victory. Crops must be planted, livestock tended to, and would gather. There's no such thing as a leisurely stroll in the park. Your movements are purposeful, driven by the need for sustenance and the desire for a better life. Every swing of the axe, every furrow in the field is a step towards your survival and prosperity. Women, too, have their share of labor, though mostly confined to the home. They rise early to start fires, cook meals, and prepare materials for spinning and weaving. Later, they might help in the fields or tend to the animals. There is little time for rest, and what leisure there is spent mending clothes or preserving food for the winter. Instead, you're awakened by the cacophony of roosters crowing and hens squawking. Your first instinct is to reach for your phone to check the time, but you remember you're now in colonial America. There's no electricity here, no smartphones, no watches. Time is measured differently, by the rising and setting of the sun, by the changing seasons, and by the chores that must be done. Your clothing is different, too. Gone are your modern clothes, replaced by garments made from flax or wool, linen or woolen shifts, sturdy skirts, and leather aprons for the women, and shirts, breeches, stockings, and waistcoats for the men. It's practical clothing designed to endure hard work, not just endure. Your clothes become, over time, a part of your identity, a badge of your station and daily toil. Your colonial morning begins not with breakfast in bed, but with the duties of the day. Colonial life is not just about work, though it's also about community. If you're hoping for some fun and games, you'll be disappointed. Life in colonial America is serious business. Food is another matter. Life in colonial America is not easy, but it's also not as bleak as it might seem. Now let's talk about the things you wouldn't last a day in a colonial town. In colonial times, personal space was non-existent. Homes were cramped, with multiple families often sharing a single structure. Colonial schools would be a far cry from the institutions we know today. Churches dominated the landscape of colonial towns, and the concept of separation of church and state was unheard of. The abundance of modern conveniences would be utterly perplexing. Imagine finding a perfectly preserved apple in a grocery store basement, or being baffled by the automated checkout at a supermarket. So how would you fare if you found yourself in a colonial town? Perhaps the greatest challenge would be the mindset. Colonial life demanded a stoic acceptance of hardship, a relentless pursuit of survival. Could you embrace this way of life? Life in a colonial town is not for the faint of heart. This episode is part of a series exploring America's darker history. Today, we delve into the unsettling reality of the Salem witch trials. To learn more about this haunting chapter of history, stay tuned for more information. Hello and welcome to the channel. It's me, and today we're going to talk about the quiet horror of the Salem witch trials. Now, you might be asking yourself, why should I care about something that happened so long ago? Their fits, they say, are brought on by the touch of witches. Gossip replaces polite conversation, and no one is safe from the next accusation. Your days are filled with anxiety, wondering who will be accused next. Will you be the next target of the afflicted girl's wrath? At first, they name a few local women rumored to dabble in witchcraft. a well-respected member of your community is accused. Perhaps it's someone you know well, someone you trust, or maybe even a family member. Suddenly, the abstract horror of the trials hits home. You witness the accused being dragged away, their cries for justice echoing in your ears. The following days are a blur. The accused person's trial and conviction are swift. People are too afraid to speak openly, fearing that their words will be twisted and used against them. Were these really acts of witchcraft? Or were they the product of an overactive imagination fueled by fear and manipulation? The victims of the trials are remembered not as witches, but as fellow townspeople who suffered and died unjustly. Their stories serve as a reminder of the importance of due process, of the dangers of mass hysteria, and of the strength that comes from standing up for what is right, even in the face of overwhelming fear. Laughter is silenced. Games and festivals are cancelled. Even religious services take on a somber tone. It's a story about fear, manipulation, and the abuse of power. It's a story that still resonates today, reminding us that such horrors can happen again if we aren't vigilant. So let the story of Salem be a lesson and a warning, and may it serve as a reminder that in the face of injustice, it's always important to stand up for what is right. The devil, it seems, has infiltrated every aspect of their lives. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button and share it with those who might appreciate it. Your support means the world to me. Subscribe to get notified about new episodes. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the fascinating narratives that shape our past, present, and future. There's a pervasive sense that everything they once held dear, their faith, their community, their very survival, is slipping through their fingers like sand. Before you can process your emotions, they're gone, leaving behind a void of grief and disbelief. Judges, lawyers, and officials descend on Salem, eager to sort through the web of accusations. You try to keep a low profile, staying indoors and avoiding conversations. But whispers follow you everywhere. Is someone watching you? Are you next? The constant fear takes a toll on your health. Sleep becomes elusive. Meals are eaten in silence. Even the sunlit hours offer little comfort. Everywhere you look, you see suspicion and mistrust. But their methods leave much to be desired. The accused have no right to counsel. You know that the condemned person will maintain their innocence to the end, that they'll face the noose with quiet dignity. The constant fear and anxiety take their toll on you. You're losing weight, you can't sleep properly, and even simple tasks seem daunting. You yearn for normalcy, for the carefree days before the trials cast their dark shadow over Salem. But there's no respite in sight. The trials continue unabated, draining the town of its joy, its hope, its very soul. Still, you can't help but wonder if they'll confess, if they'll break under the pressure and betray themselves to save their own skin. When they emerge from their house, you steal a final glance. They're pale, their steps slow, but their eyes are steady. They walk willingly to their fate, believing in their own righteousness, trusting in God's eventual vindication, and no chance to defend themselves against the charges. Evidence, or lack thereof, becomes irrelevant. The word of the afflicted girls is law. Spectral evidence, essentially the girls' visions of the accused tormenting them, is accepted as tangible proof. This practice allows the girls' testimony to stand unchallenged, creating a terrifying precedent. But as the weeks pass and the accusations grow, more and more names are added to the list. The girls' claims become more dramatic. The accused, bewildered and frightened, try to defend themselves, but their words fall on deaf ears. No one is willing to listen. No one wants to believe that the charming Rebecca Nurse or the respected John Proctor could be involved in witchcraft. Yet the evidence, or rather the lack of it, is ignored. Instead, the court focuses on the girls' dramatic performances, which become more elaborate and theatrical as the trials progress. They speak in tongues, contort their bodies into impossible shapes, and even levitate, according to The accused suffered terribly, enduring painful examinations and public humiliation. Some confess, hoping to spare themselves and perhaps influence a lighter sentence. Others remain steadfast in their innocence, knowing that confession would be a betrayal of their beliefs and their souls. Either way, the outcome is grim. The convicted are sentenced to hang, and the mere whisper of such a fate hangs over every interaction. The fear is palpable, the sadness overwhelming. Their stories intertwine, creating a tapestry of horror that's impossible to unravel. The line between reality and delusion blurs, leaving everyone unsure of what to believe. Well, Because the story of Salem isn't just about pointy hats and broomsticks. It's a story about fear, manipulation, and the abuse of power. Life here is tough. Winters are harsh, supplies are scarce, and the constant threat of wild animals and hostile Native Americans looms large. You're a deeply religious person, a Puritan who believes that the devil prowls the earth, tempting the righteous and turning them away from God. Suddenly a group of young girls begins acting strangely. They cry out in pain, thrash about, and seem to be tormented by invisible forces. When questioned, they claim that they've been afflicted by witchcraft, that evil spirits are at work upon them. Fear grips the community. Accusations are made, and soon enough, a wave of hysteria sweeps through Salem. It's a story that still resonates today, reminding us that such horrors can happen again if we aren't vigilant. Picture this. It's January 1692 and you're living in Salem Village, a small town nestled in the vast wilderness of Colonial Mass. At the heart of the chaos are the afflicted girls, a group of young women whose erratic behavior sets the entire town on edge. Imagine being a resident of Salem during this time. Every neighbor, every friend, every family member suddenly becomes a suspect. Trust evaporates, replaced by suspicion and paranoia. As the madness spirals, a special court is established to handle the growing number of witchcraft cases. You watch in horror as people are arrested, dragged before the court, and sentenced based on the girls' often contradictory accounts. Life in Salem is now a nightmare. The trials dominate every waking moment, and then it happens. The next few weeks are a blur of fear and uncertainty. More and more people are accused. The atmosphere in Salem grows thick with tension. In the distance, you hear the sound of drums, the tolling of a bell. Your heart sinks. It's time for another execution. Days turn into weeks, and the trials show no signs of slowing down. As the trials reach their peak, the mood in Salem becomes unbearable. Slowly but surely, however, doubt begins to creep in. People start questioning the validity of the trials. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be taking a look at one of the strangest and most unnerving events in American history, the 1848 murder of Maria Mengeleba and the shocking trial that followed. The case captivated the nation and raised disturbing questions about religious fanaticism and the limits of human morality. Before we delve into the details of this grim event, I want to ask you for a favor. Theirs was a love that transcended societal norms, as he was a white man who had been freed from slavery. The two sisters resided just a few doors apart in a predominantly African-American neighborhood. Around 9 o'clock that evening, as Mara walked along the dimly lit streets, she encountered a lone man who, according to witness testimonies, had been lurking in the area that night. Many believed the charges against him to be unfounded, seeing them as a symptom of growing racial tensions in the capital. Two sailors testified that they had seen Samuel Dallas near the crime scene around the time of the attack, corroborating Mary's sister's account of the incident. Advocates for racial justice demanded systemic change to address the biases within the legal system and law enforcement. The case of Mary Mengeleba became a rallying cry for those fighting against racial discrimination, urging for a society that valued justice and equality over prejudice and apathy. The murder of Mary Mengeleba and the subsequent trial of Samuel Dallas remain a pivotal moment in American history. It serves as a stark reminder of the challenges faced by African Americans in their pursuit of equality and justice. The case also highlights the complexities of the legal system and the potential for bias and prejudice to influence its outcomes. Even in a time when progress towards racial equality seemed elusive, the trial offered a glimpse of hope, demonstrating that through unity and perseverance, the fight for justice could continue. However, these testimonies were later challenged, raising doubts about their reliability. Your engagement helps us bring more historical tales to light. As the trial dragged on, the community waited anxiously for a verdict. The case had become more than just a legal matter. It was a test of the city's commitment to justice and racial equality. After 5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a guilty verdict. Samuel Dallas was convicted of murder in the second degree and sentenced to serve 15 years at the Virginia State Penitentiary. The news of the verdict spread like wildfire through Washington, D.C. Many African Americans saw the conviction as a victory for justice, a moment when the legal system upheld the rights of a marginalized community. Yet others viewed the verdict as a setback, a mere formality to appease public outcry without genuine commitment to equality. This sentiment was fueled by the police and city officials' failure to apprehend Dallas promptly after the attack, leading many to accuse them of indifference towards African American lives. Once Dallas was in custody, public opinion was divided. Some argued that Dallas, a known heavy drinker, had acted in self-defense after Mary's insulting slap. Others maintained that the attack was racially motivated, pointing to incidents of white men harming black women in a time when such acts were often excused or ignored by law enforcement. As the trial commenced, tensions escalated. The courtroom became a battleground of conflicting narratives, with witnesses offering differing accounts of the fateful evening. Dallas's defense team portrayed him as a victim of circumstance, a man who had acted in. They emphasized his history as a respected member of the community, highlighting his exemplary service during the War of 1812 and his reputation as a skilled craftsman. Conversely, the prosecution painted a picture of a man driven by racial prejudice. They argued that Mary's attack on Dallas, while regrettable, did not justify his brutal actions, especially given his history of violence against black people. Furthermore, they noted that Dallas had initially fled the scene, demonstrating his guilt. His name was Samuel Dallas, an elderly black man with a limp. He was well known in the neighborhood as a harmless cobbler who spent his nights drinking heavily. The encounter between Mary and Dallas was unremarkable until it wasn't. Just as Mary was about to reach her sister's house, Dallas grabbed her arm. Startled, Mary turned round and slapped him. This minor altercation, a slap on a dark street, would spiral into one of the most controversial trials in American history. Despite the societal pressures that often tear such couples apart, they dared to dream of a shared future and decided to elope. According to his testimony in court, he then went home, retrieved a knife, and returned to confront Mary. He claimed that as Mary walked past his corner, he called out to her, and when she responded, he attacked. He stabbed her once in the back and once in the breast. Mary managed to stumble to her sister's doorstep where she collapsed. As she lay dying, she was able to identify her attacker as the man who had grabbed her, Samuel Dallas. Though the wounds were severe, medical professionals were cautiously optimistic. The stabs did not penetrate deeply enough to be immediately fatal, and it appeared that Mary would survive. However, during the following Sunday service at the African ME Church on 14th Street, Mary passed away surrounded by her family and friends. The tight-knit African American community was deeply affected by the tragedy. The murder of a beloved member shook them to the core and ignited a fervor for justice. The Menjaliba family demanded justice, insisting on the prosecution of Samuel Dallas. However, their pleas fell on deaf ears. The police refused to make an arrest, citing insufficient evidence. For the next 4 days, Mary's body remained unburied as her distraught family pressured the authorities for action. Finally, on May 6, 1848, Samuel Dallas was apprehended based on the eyewitness account provided by Mary before her death. The couple's decision to unite was met with resistance from both their families. Mary's sister, Eliza, accused Godfrey of only wanting to marry Mary for her inheritance, while her father, Peter, believed that Godfrey's proposal was nothing but a ruse to acquire Mary's money. These warnings only seemed to strengthen Godfrey and Mary's resolve. In April 1848, they secretly tied the knot. Their happiness, however, was short-lived. If you haven't already, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing for more historical insights. Your support helps us continue sharing these stories. Now let us turn our attention back to the unsettling tale of Maria Menjaliba and the chilling events of 1848. Imagine being an innocent young woman making your way down a dark and narrow street. Suddenly, a stranger approaches, his face hidden in the shadows, his intentions unknown. And then, a touch, a grab, and the world turns into a nightmare. This was the fate of Mary Surratt, whose simple walk down a DC street would lead to a tragic end. Born in 1820, Mary Surratt was a young African-American woman living in Washington, D.C. during a time of immense racial prejudice. Her life was marked by hardship and tragedy. Early on, she endured the loss of her mother and was forced to navigate the world without formal education. At the tender age of 15, she found herself in a loveless marriage that yielded 4 children. By the time she was 24, her husband, a man named Isaac, had passed away, leaving her to raise their children alone. With limited opportunities and burdened by societal constraints, Mary turned to domestic service for survival. Working as a servant in the house of Judge William T. Carroll, here she toiled for 13 years, enduring the complexities of working in a white household during a time when race relations were at a boiling point. In 1847, her life took another dramatic turn. She became romantically involved with a man named Godfrey Man. On May 1, 1848, Mary Menjulaba left her home on 13th Street to visit her sister Eliza. Dallas, incensed by the slap, retreated to a nearby corner. The arrest of Samuel Dallas sent shockwaves through the city. During the trial, a key piece of evidence emerged. In the aftermath of the trial, calls for reform echoed throughout the city. In this episode, we're going to explore what life would have been like in the governor's mansion, the seat of colonial government in Virginia. If you're new here, welcome to the channel where we bring history to life through immersive experiences. If you enjoy this video, make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon to never miss an upload. His days were a ceaseless dance of power, privilege, and intricate politics. Elaborate dinners, balls, and receptions were regular occurrences within the grand halls of the palace. Fine imported furniture, often crafted from mahogany, adorned the rooms. Walls might be hung with damask or painted in fashionable colors. The governor's lady was often responsible for managing a large household staff, overseeing the education of her children, and participating in charitable endeavors. It showcased the power and order that the crown sought to impose, the refined culture that the colonial elite aspired to, and the underlying currents of political tension that were steadily building beneath the surface of elegant dinners and formal balls. It was a life of influence and comfort, certainly, but also one burdened by immense responsibility and the ever-present specter of political unrest that would soon transform the very landscape of these American colonies. Their lives were on public display, every action scrutinized, contributing to the perceived grandeur and stability of British rule. The governor's children, meanwhile, would have received an education tailored to their elevated status. Tutors would have been employed to teach them subjects ranging from classics to mathematics. Their lessons, no doubt echoing in the stately rooms of the palace, would have instilled in them a sense of duty and an understanding of their place in colonial society. Chandeliers, perhaps with dozens of candles, would illuminate the evenings, a stark contrast to the single flickering flame in a settler's home. The kitchen, a separate building to prevent fire and contain the heat, would be bustling with enslaved cooks and servants preparing elaborate meals, featuring imported spices, fine wines, and a greater variety of meats and vegetables than most colonists would ever see. You've experienced the thrill of exploration, the hardships of frontier life, and the complexities of colonial rule. Your journey through time has come to an end, but the stories you've lived will stay with you forever. Which life did you prefer? The adventure of a Jamestown settler, the intrigue of life in the governor's mansion, or the solitude of Roanoke Island? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this immersive experience, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more journeys through time. Thank you for joining us. Meals would be served on fine china, and the governor's table was not just a place of sustenance, but a setting for important diplomatic discussions. Imagine sitting at a table with a red and white checked linen cloth, sipping Madeira wine from a hand-painted porcelain cup, and discussing critical matters with men who wielded considerable power in the colony. But while food was plentiful, it was not without its controversies. The issue of slavery loomed over every aspect of life in the colonies, including the governor's palace. Enslaved individuals were integral to the functioning of the household, preparing meals, cleaning rooms, and managing the extensive grounds of the estate. Yet the moral implications of this institution could not be ignored. Some colonists, particularly those further removed from the realities of plantation life, began to question the morality of slavery. Even within the palace walls, the humanity of the enslaved individuals was undeniable. You might overhear snatches of conversation from the servants' quarters, or witness the quiet dignity of an enslaved person carrying out their duties. While slavery was deeply entrenched in the economy and society of the time, it was not without its critics. These were not merely social gatherings, they were vital political arenas. The governor was constantly navigating a complex web of relationships. He had to balance the demands of the crown, which often sought to exert greater control and extract more revenue from the colonies, with the growing aspirations and often fierce independence of the colonial legislatures and their elected representatives. These assemblies, though initially subservient, were increasingly asserting their own authority, particularly when it came to taxation and local governance. This delicate balancing act could be incredibly fraught, leading to heated debates and political stalemates. Imagine the subtle tension in the room during a legislative session. The governor, seated at the head of the chamber, listening to eloquent, often impassioned, speeches from figures like Patrick Henry or Thomas Jefferson, advocating for greater colonial autonomy. While these early discussions might have seemed like polite disagreements, they were the nascent rumblings of a fundamental conflict that would eventually erupt into revolution. The governor was often caught in the middle, loyal to his king, yet acutely aware of the growing discontent among the colonists he governed. Imagine the gentle murmur of conversation, the clinking of delicate china and silver, the rustle of fine silks and wools as the colonial elite, wealthy planters, prominent merchants, and influential lawyers. Here, alliances were forged, political favors were exchanged, and the pulse of colonial society was felt. The governor and his lady would be at the center of these affairs, their every gesture observed, their every word weighed. During such events, the great hall of the governor's palace would have come alive with activity. Servants carrying platters of food and goblets of wine would navigate the crowd, their steps light and precise. Musicians would be stationed near a long, richly decorated table laden with delicacies. Roasted meats, perhaps venison or wild turkey, would sit alongside bowls of fruit, nuts, and cheeses. Wine, both from the New World and imported European vintages, would flow freely. The atmosphere would be one of controlled merriment, with guests engaging in lively repartee and subtle displays of wealth and power. These evenings would have been a carefully choreographed dance of etiquette, with guests observing strict rules of conduct and decorum. The ladies, adorned in their finest gowns and jewels, would have engaged in polite conversation, while the gentlemen, many wearing the traditional breeches, stockings, and waistcoats of the era, would have discussed politics, trade, and the latest news from England. There would have been moments of music and perhaps even dancing, filling the great hall with the sounds of laughter and the whirl of skirts. Yet beneath this veneer of civilized amusement, there would have been an undercurrent of awareness of the political implications of such gatherings. Alliances were made and maintained, business deals were struck, and the governor, as the host, would have been acutely aware of the dynamics at play. Each guest, each conversation, each exchange would have been a piece in the intricate game of colonial politics. The governor's palace wasn't just a place of work and entertainment, it was a symbol of British authority in the colonies, and that authority was often challenged. Whether it was disputes over land rights with neighboring colonies, conflicts with Native American tribes, or the ever-present issue of how much autonomy the colonies should have, the governor was at the center of these issues. Imagine the scene in the governor's study as he reads a letter outlining the latest conflict over land with the colony of North Carolina, or as he listens to a delegation of Native Americans seeking redress for a perceived injustice. The responsibilities were immense, and the decisions he made had profound consequences. The threat of violence, though less immediate than on the frontier, was still ever present. Discontented colonists or rival colonial governors might seek to remove him forcibly, and the governor's residence was designed with security in mind. High walls, sturdy gates, and even armed guards were part of his personal security detail. As you walked the manicured gardens of the governor's palace, surrounded by the scent of roses and herbs, you might pause to consider that this tranquility was often shattered by the arrival of urgent couriers or the rattle of approaching troops. When news arrived from England, it was carried by ship across the tumultuous Atlantic, taking weeks or even months to reach the colonies. This meant that the governor and other colonial leaders often had to make critical decisions. Without the benefit of the latest information from the crown, they were operating in a kind of information vacuum, making choices that could have far-reaching consequences. His primary duties included enforcing British law, commanding the colonial militia, overseeing the judicial system, and managing relations with the various Native American tribes. He was the direct link between the burgeoning colonies and the distant, yet all-powerful, monarchy across the Atlantic. Life within the governor's palace was meticulously structured and revolved around a demanding schedule. Mornings would likely begin with private correspondence, drafting reports to the Board of Trade in London, and reviewing petitions from colonial citizens. The governor's office, adorned with maps, legal texts, and perhaps a globe, would be a hive of quiet activity, staffed by secretaries and clerks who meticulously copied documents by hand, their quills scratching softly on parchment. Sunlight streamed in through long windows, casting elongated shadows on the desks and chairs where decisions were made that shaped the colony's future. Having traversed the harsh daily toil of the common settler and pondered the chilling silence of Roanoke, let us now ascend to a different sphere of colonial existence. Life in the governor's mansion. This segment invites you to imagine a world of relative luxury and immense responsibility, a stark contrast to the rough-hewn cabins we previously visited, yet a world with its own unique pressures and demands. Picture yourself now in Williamsburg, Virginia, in the mid-18th century, the elegant capital of the largest and wealthiest of the British American colonies. Instead of a humble, smoky cabin, you step into a grand, imposing brick edifice, a symmetrical Georgian mansion known simply as the Governor's Palace. The air here is different. It carries the faint scent of polished wood, beeswax, and perhaps the delicate aroma of imported tea, or the rich notes of pipe tobacco. The red brick walls are covered in climbing vines, and in the distance, you can hear the soft murmur of voices and the gentle strum of a harpsichord. The governor, appointed by the British Crown, was not merely a figurehead. He was the embodiment of royal authority in the colony. Beyond his immediate administrative tasks, the governor was also the chief social arbiter of the colony. While these challenges were significant, life at the governor's palace also held privileges and comforts unknown to most colonists. The luxuries within the palace were a world apart from the average settler's existence, yet they came with their own unique burdens. For the governor's family, particularly his wife and children, life in the palace also meant a different set of expectations and routines. In essence, the governor's mansion was a microcosm of the colonial relationship with Britain. As you step out of your time machine and return to the year 2023, you can't help but feel a sense of disorientation. Let's keep going. In the heart of this historic home, beside a crackling hearth, picture a woman sitting in an elbow chair. Her name is Patience, and her life is a tapestry woven with the threads of colonial existence. Here, the air is thick with the scent of beeswax and lavender as servants bustle about, preparing for an evening reception. Crystal chandeliers are meticulously polished, their facets ready to capture the flickering glow of candlelight. Portraits of stern-faced ancestors gaze down from the walls, their eyes seeming to judge the actions of those who dwell within the house. The governor, dressed in the finest fabrics, adjusts his powdered wig in preparation for the arrival of esteemed guests. His wife, resplendent in a silk gown, smiles graciously, her laughter echoing with tinkling bells. Within these hallowed halls, theirs is a life of privilege and duty. Theirs is a world where decisions made around mahogany tables can shape the course of a burgeoning colony. Yet for all the grandeur, there are whispers of discontent. Servants exchange nervous glances, aware of the governor's temper. Scholars and thinkers gather in secret, discussing the growing pains of a colony yearning for autonomy. In the dead of night, the governor paces his study, wrestling with the conflicting loyalties that plague him. Duty to the crown versus the burgeoning spirit of independence among his people. The weight of these dilemmas etched into the lines on his face. He, too, is a product of his environment, shaped by the hopes and struggles of a new world he's sworn to govern. Patience's day began before sunrise and ended well after sunset. Settled back into the worn armchair, letting the crackling fire replace the chaos of the day. Let the dancing flames carry away the tension, the anxieties that built like a storm within your chest. Close your eyes if it feels right, surrendering to the soft glow that bathes the room. You might hear the murmur of voices from the past, feel the brush of their hands on yours, or see the flicker of their lives reflected in the fire. What wisdom do their stories bring to you? How did their struggles echo in your own life? Perhaps you sensed the strength of the colonial woman, the resilience of the governor, or the quiet determination of the scholars. Maybe you find kinship with the accused witch, understanding the weight of unfounded fears, or feeling the pull of the sea as it beckons the restless souls of Roanoke. Allow these feelings to wash over you, to intertwine with your own narrative. For in understanding their stories, you're also understanding a part of yourself. Their lives, though separated by time, are threads in the grand tapestry of existence, connecting you to a legacy that's both ancient and eternally human. And as you sit here, enveloped by the warmth of the fire and the echoes of the past, remember that you, too, are part of this narrative. Your life, your hopes, your dreams are all threads waiting to be woven into the fabric of time. Embrace this connection, honor the echoes that resonate within you, and let the flickering flames guide you towards understanding. When you're ready, open your eyes, knowing that you've not just visited the past, but carried a piece of it back with you to the present. Take this newfound understanding, this resonant connection with you as you step out into the world. Let it be a guiding light, a source of strength, or a reminder of the shared humanity that binds us across time and circumstance. Her hands, roughened by years of toil, clutched a wooden mug filled with steaming tea. Outside, the wind carried the scent of pine and the distant rumble of thunder. Dawn had broken, and with it, the promise of another arduous day. Her husband, Thomas, was already preparing the fields for planting, while their 2 children, Mary and Samuel, were helping with the morning chores. Patience knew that soon she would need to join them, but for now, she savored the stolen moments of quiet before the day's demands took over. A quick glance at her reflection in the fireplace, dancing flames revealed a face weathered by the sun and wind. Her linen dress, once white, was now tinged with the gray of countless washings. Despite the fatigue etched into the lines on her face, there was a quiet strength in her posture, a resilience that spoke of years of hardship endured and overcome. Patience was not merely a wife or a mother. She was also a vital part of their survival. She tended their small herb garden, providing not just sustenance, but also the knowledge of healing, remedies passed down from her grandmother, a woman who Deben called a wise woman in a time when such titles blurred the lines between tradition and superstition. In the evenings, after Thomas had finished reading by the light of a flickering candle, Patience would tell stories to her wide-eyed children about her own childhood, about a time before the new world was so new. Tales of England, of cobblestone streets and ancient churches, a life that seemed like a half-forgotten dream. These moments of storytelling were precious, offering a brief escape from the relentless demands of their frontier existence. But as the night deepened and the fire sputtered, the reality of their situation pressed in. The wind outside grew more insistent, mirroring the loneliness that sometimes gnawed at her heart. There were times when Patience longed for the comforts she'd known in England, for the familiarity of friends and family. Yet she knew that here in this wilderness they were carving out a new life, one rooted in hard work and the promise of a better future for their children. This home, though small and modest, was theirs. Every notch in the wooden wall, every creak in the floorboard was a silent testament to their shared struggle and quiet victories. And as Patience gazed into the fire, she saw not just dancing flames, but the reflection of her own spirit, resilient and strong, a flame that refused to be extinguished by the darkness that sometimes threatened to consume them. Shifting our focus, we move from the humble hearth to the imposing structure that dominates the horizon, the governor's mansion. And now let's return to the place where our journey began, the hearth.